Hey, how y'all doing? Thank you for choosing the magnificent MongoSlade for all of your wrestling content and information. Like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get into the video. The following statements are tweets from Leo Rush. Dear Wrestling World, being black is not a gimmick. I repeat, being black is not a gimmick. If you're going to evolve championships, stage settings, corporate funding on pointless shit, the women's division, and everything else, then this needs to change also. We are not for your convenience. We are not for your quote unquote good faith publicity stunts. We are strong, we are dedicated, and most importantly, we are hungry. If one thing evolves, then everything must, including your system. Let's not go backwards, let's move forward. And we will not be marginalized to your backstage ass kissing political antics. Being an African American professional wrestler is a lot harder than you think. And to be honest, it's exhausting as hell. What I'm tired of seeing and experiencing in the wrestling community are African Americans being villainized for false stories and minor mishaps. This isn't random. It's very current, and it's been current. I'm sick of it. The system isn't just the problem. It's also the people tweeting and saying that African Americans have mental issues when they decide enough is enough and finally decide to speak out. It's disgusting. I'm sick of the bullshit, and it pains me because I love this business so much. To the fans, do better. You're the ones killing wrestling and making this shit whack. Stop pairing up black people because you don't know what to do with them. Stop that shit. Stop giving African Americans title reigns when global black issues are happening. We're not stupid. Stop that shit. And and of course he went off on Finn Balor about some other reason, and I have no idea. So let's take these tweets one at a time. As far as the interest. For starters, Leo, I remember when 50 Cent used to start beef to sell albums. Now Leo Rush and a lot of other people, they start social justice issues to sell albums. Leo Rush has an album coming out. Okay? He's a rapper or some shit. And for a long time, for at least until somebody noticed it, uh, he had Ever After Out Now as his name on Twitter. Ever After his name of his album. It was on Apple and all that bullshit. I'm giving him free publicity, even though my channel is smaller than it's one of the counts, one of the hearts on his tweets. But I'm just sick. I'm a signal boost it because I want him to do well. Okay, so he says, "Dear Wrestling World, being black is not a gimmick. I repeat, being black is not a gimmick. It's also not a personality. If you're a lot of what took place, what spurred all this? I have to go back. Some guy who I don't know, AJ Gray or something like that, I think that's his name, and several other unsigned black wrestlers decided they were going to go on Twitter and complain about the lack of representation, specifically in AEW. The WWE is well represented by black athletes, but AEW really is not. The black wrestlers on AEW are relegated mostly to AEW Dark, which is the YouTube channel of AEW, and it's basically the second show, but it's kind of who cares about anything about it, and they're kind of jobbers, so they're not really. So basically, a lot of black wrestlers kind of got grouped into this whole ordeal because everybody has to stand together, and so he's saying being black is not a gimmick. Well, of course it's not a gimmick. Then why are you guys treating it like a gimmick? Being black is not a gimmick. So why are you treating it like one? Why is it that we absolutely have to have? And one of my favorite sayings is something I'm just going to say it right now. Diversity, quote unquote, is a jobs program for mediocre motherfuckers, especially mediocre niggas. Okay, when you can't get a job any other way, just claim racism. That's just kind of how it is. When you're not, I mean, you have to ask the question: is there any other variables that could confound why I haven't gotten a job yet? Okay. Could it be I'm too small? Could it be I'm too old? Could it be I don't know the right people? Could it be I haven't been working in the business long enough? Could it be any other thing? I gave you 4 things off the top of my head. A lot of people that AEW signed, I will admit, they signed them based off nepotism. So you have a lot of people in AEW who shouldn't be there, but they are there because they're friends of somebody else. Chris Jericho had his friends hired. The Young Bucks got their friends hired. Kenny Omega got his friends hired. But not all these people were white. Like one of Kenny Omega has hired a lot of the Japanese women because he worked in Japan for a really long time and he knew a lot of the Joshi Puroresus, and he was able to bring a lot of them over, like Riho and Shida and Yuka Nakazaki or whatever the fuck her name was. And his best friend is Michael Nakazawa, who is also Japanese. Who speaks perfect English, but he's also Japanese. So yes, you also have Brandon Cutler. I think is one of the friends of the Young Bucks. Chris Jericho, John Moxley had an AEW dark match with his friend, who he brought in. So yes, there's a lot of people who are using AEW, and WWE does it too. Like I said, WWE is nepotism personified. They hired The Rock's 17-year-old daughter just because she was The Rock's daughter. Okay, that was really. They hired what was Eddie's daughter's name? I forget what her name was, but they had her under contract for a long time, and she never made TV. So they will hire people just based off of who they're family with and who they're friends with. But usually AEW has become, they claim they were going to be different. So I will give people that complaint. Like if you want to, there are some people who have that complaint, and that complaint makes sense. AEW did say they were going to be different. They were going to be a progressive wrestling company, and they do not have any high-profile black wrestlers. But they start this the very week that they started all this nonsense, which is the week of July 15th episode of Dynamite, which started with a homosexual black man and a title match. It's not the best week to start this, right? So Sonny Kiss wrestled Cody in the first match of AEW Dynamite. So for people to say, well, there are no black representations, it's like, is Sonny Kiss not black enough, or is he not gay enough? Because the guy was on TV being a cheerleader, and he wears lipstick, and he seems to have like butt implants. So you can't tell me like the guy's not black enough, the guy's not gay enough. Being black is not a gimmick. Then why are they treating it like a gimmick? And he says, his next tweet, if you're going to evolve championship stage settings, corporate funding on pointless shit, then women's division and everything else, then this needs to change also. We're not for your convenience. Then I don't understand what that means. We're not for your convenience. We're not for your good face publicity stunts. Now I can agree with that. That's that tokenization shit that I talked about in my previous video with Mark Quinn. That, it might have been a publicity stunt that Mark Quinn got that match. Now, do I think the same thing about Sonny Kiss? I really didn't care, man. I'm burnt out on this whole racial shit. And people, like I said, man, it's a jobs program. It's for mediocre people who got fired or can't find work to complain online about, well, we need to get hired and we need to do more. We need to do this. We need to do that. And it's like, now is like the perfect time for you to send all this bullshit to Ice Cube and Diddy and all these millionaire niggas and have them start up their own wrestling company. If they really want to deal with this bullshit, they can do it. Okay? He says, we are strong, we are dedicated, and most importantly, we are hungry. So is everybody in the wrestling business for the most part. This doesn't mean anything. Being an African-American professional wrestler is harder than you think. I think that being a professional wrestler in general is harder than you think. What I'm tired of seeing of the wrestling community is our African-Americans being, for starters, whenever you see a black person using the term African-Americans, they're full of shit. Okay? Nobody talks like this. All right? I've never met a black person who continues to use African-American or people of color. Both of those are red flags. That's how you know that's like when you see that episode of the Boondocks and Riley is wearing glasses and he's like, he called me a nigger. It's like, you're full of shit. Okay? African-American. You from Baltimore. Or from Washington, D.C. or something like that. They don't talk like that. He says, so what I'm tired of seeing experience in wrestling community are African Americans being villainized for false stories and minor mishaps. Why shouldn't they? Like, isn't that a responsibility on yourself if you're going to give somebody a story? It should be a real story. Now, this is obviously an allusion to ACH and other situations of the AJ Gray fellow who started all this nonsense was found out to be both transphobic and homophobic. Because of course he is. He's a black male professional wrestler. Of course you can go back to his tweets in 2013 and find him calling somebody a tranny or a faggot. I mean, it's inevitable. All right. He was kind of dumb for bringing all the attention on himself and then still having that stuff up. You really should clear that shit out before you start getting on a soapbox, and because people gonna start looking. People are gonna look. Let's be real about it. He says it's also the people tweeting saying that African Americans have mental issues when they decide to enough is enough and decide to finally speak out. Okay, so now we got a red flag here because it's not everybody. Everybody doesn't have a mental health issue. Leo Rush in particular does, because Leo Rush talked about his mental health issues. ACH does, because ACH talked about his mental health issues. And ACH also apologized to the WWE and wrestling fans and all that type of stuff. And now he's being booked for Game Changer Wrestling. And I wish him well. But trying to hide behind, well, they're saying I have mental health issues. It's like, well, look, man, you do. And it has nothing to do with anybody else. It's all about you. You're the one saying these things, and people are going to look at your credibility because you have spurged out before. You spurged out on Mark Henry, earlier this year. Again, he had a song out then. In 2019, he had an album come out. He spurged out and quit. And Mark Henry, he started up that beef for no reason again earlier in 2020. Because he had a song that was coming out. Now he's got an album coming out, and he's spurging out again. So either he's an opportunist or he's mentally ill. Because Leo Rush does, outside of this kind of shit, he really doesn't have anything to say. He's also promoting One Final Match, whatever that is, right? I don't know where his One Final Match is going to be, and I don't care. So he says, I'm sick of the bullshit, and it pays me because I love this business so much. To the fans, do better. You're the ones killing wrestling and making this shit whack. I half agree with this. Because a lot of the progressive wrestling fans who constantly complain, much like the progressive wrestlers, about lack of diversity, not enough gay people, not enough women, not enough this, not enough that, not enough bells and whistles, not enough money, blah, 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 blah. It's always a problem. The fans did start this, and I blame Meltzer, because Meltzer has, through his Twitter page and through, the dirt sheets, he has influenced the business so much that people now think that they know everything when they don't. But you also have all these people injecting their personal politics into this situation. And they have that's just wrestling journalism in general. Because wrestling journalists, there's a thing where they say sports journalists are the bastards of journalism, but then believe that wrestling journalists are the niggers. They're the gutter of sports journalism, because they don't cover a diehard real sport. So that's just kind of how it is. All right, everybody kind of goes overboard. Clay Travis on ESPN, or not ESPN, but he does Outkick, and he talks a lot about how ESPN has kind of torpedoed their own audience by being progressive and just having Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman lambast people about race for 3 hours a fucking day. And people didn't want to hear that. They want to talk about sports. That's what sports is. But, other people have just sort of, I think Jason Whitlock has also kind of said that, I think that's where I got the whole idea that sports reporters are sort of on the outside of mainstream journalism. And then you have to take pro wrestling journalists even on the outside of that, because they don't follow a legitimate sport. So, yes, people who go to sports journalists and go to wrestling journalists to get their information, they're going to get these bastardized political opinions. But they also get it from just being on Twitter and just being on YouTube and just having that stuff constantly pumped into their heads anyway. And again, this is partly AEW's fault, because they promised to be a progressive wrestling company, and they have not delivered. They do not have significant black representation on their roster. Their women do not get the same amount of time the women get in WWE, and they probably don't get paid the same amount of money as well. So yeah, they brought this on themselves by telling the world they were going to be a progressive wrestling company. So I half agree with Leo Rush on that. Leo Rush then says, stop pairing up black people because you don't know what to do with them. Stop that shit. So he's in other words saying, stop making black people tag team partners. This is, of course, due to Ricochet and Cedric Alexander being teamed up. Ricochet is half black, though. So does it count that Ricochet is half black because his mom is white? But I guess it does count. That Ricochet and Cedric Alexander, two guys who really don't have that much charisma, really don't have that much personality, WWE just decided to make them a tag team. And some people kind of said, well, they didn't know what to do with these guys. They just put them in tag teams. It's like, so? At least they're being used. Would you rather they do nothing? Like, what is your response to it? It's like we're going to just complain just to complain. You have no people. See, it's easy to chuck out problems. It's hard to find um, solutions. Now, both of these men have children. And yes, Cedric Alexander's wife works for AEW, so she's got a paycheck coming in. That doesn't mean that we make daddy unemployed because, well, creative has nothing for you, so we're just going to fire you. If we can do something, to extend your run until maybe we can find something for you to do, then I say do it. Fuck, why not? I would rather be in a tag team based on my race and have the opportunity to get over, because white guys do. It happens to white guys too, by the way. It happens to Hispanics as well. It doesn't really happen to Asians that much because there's very few Asians on the roster at the same time. But it happens when they usually team up people who are somewhat similar, or somewhat similar in some way. If two guys are country bumpkins, they'd probably put them together and they'd be like some kind of country-based tag team. And you also have the oddball tag teams like Nakamura and Cesaro, who are in the same situation. Nakamura is a gatekeeper. Cesaro is also a gatekeeper. They really don't have anything for them individually, so they put them together as a team. Does it make sense? No. But, it is what it is. I think Ricochet and Alexander probably have more in common than Nakamura and Cesaro, just based off their background. And again, Ricochet is from a small town in Kentucky, and I don't remember where Cedric Alexander is from, but I'm pretty sure they probably hang out together and all that type of stuff anyway. I learned from the Ricochet documentary, he's really close with a lot of the brothers, like the Kofis and the Big E's, and he's really cool with a lot of those, Black Lives Matter dudes on the WWE roster, and Cedric Alexander is one of them. Why wouldn't they team up? Why wouldn't they, if there's an opportunity for them to be elevated together, and then maybe one day they separate and go their own way, why not do it? Why not? I don't see any reason why that should be the case. That's stupid, Leo. That's fucking stupid. Stop giving African Americans title reigns when global black issues are happening. In other words, stop trying to cash in on Black Lives Matter. This is an attack on Keith Lee. So Keith Lee, for people who, if you watch wrestling, you got to know by now. Keith Lee won the NXT championship. He also promoted the Black Lives Matter stuff. Keith Lee has been pushed consistently as a top guy on NXT for almost a year. So it didn't come out of nowhere that Keith Lee got a huge push. It also doesn't really apply to Apollo Crews either. Again, Paul Heyman was pushing black guys, and this was a problem I had with Paul, because I kind of felt like he was just replacing one Negro with another, where he wanted to push Cedric Alexander. It didn't work. He just replaced him with Ricochet. That didn't work. He just replaced him with Apollo Crews. And he did the same thing with the Mexicans, where he would try to push Humberto Carrillo. That didn't work, so he tried to push Andrade. That didn't work, so he just pushed Angel Garza, and that seemed to really work. Like, they're just casting. And yes, I will agree that is a problem, because that's just stereotyping. We just saying, these Negroes are just interchangeable. That's destroying their individuality. They are individuals, and as individuals, they should deserve individual opportunities. And it doesn't work sometimes, okay? That doesn't mean that, we should stop pushing people. But I do agree that trying to ride the coattails of a Black Lives Matter situation is corny. I will agree with that. I don't like that. That's stupid. And it goes to show that even the woke people turned on him when he said this. When he said, stop giving African Americans title reigns when the global black issues are happening, the other woke people, some of the woke people turned on him when he said that. They were so that should tell you that they're trying to use Black Lives Matter and all that bullshit to make black people champions and put black people on the at the front of the line. Whatever. Kofi Kingston was the WWE champion for almost 6 months or something like that. It happens. But AEW does not have a single black champion. Has not had a single. Well, I guess Scorpio Sky, was he a tag team champion? I think he was. Look, man, don't get me the line. I have no idea. But Leo Rush has really jumped out the box again with his nonsense. And I don't know, man. I agree. I gave my personal opinion on a lot of his most controversial tweets, but he's still tweeting as I record this, I record this on July the 18th. He's still tweeting, so who knows what the fuck else he's got to say. But a lot of this stuff is just him trying to promote his album, using wokeness to promote his album. That's essentially what he's doing. Now, some of his points are valid. A lot of his points are not. A lot of the people who are complaining who are not now also let's not forget Leo Rush got fired from the WWE because he said he didn't want to work during the pandemic. He told them via Twitter, because he told the world he did not want to work during the pandemic. So they didn't ask him. And then he got fired. When they did the roster cuts, Leo Rush was on it. Why? Because he told them he didn't want to work during the pandemic. And then he tried to backtrack. Once he kind of saw that the pandemic was going on a little long, he backtracked. Like his final match that he's been promoting. The pandemic is still going on, and he's willing to work this final match. He's full of shit, okay? He's full of shit. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.